Are traditional sales training setting reps up for failure? And what happens when a top performing seller decides to throw out the playbook and build her own school from scratch? In this episode, we sit down with Emily Yu, founder of the Emily Yu School of Sales and former Salesforce and Tableau seller. She creates a bold, modern alternative to outdated sales training, from climbing the corporate ladder to launching a movement rooted in empathy, data, and real results. Emily's journey is changing how the next generation learns to sell. Is this theory, or does this actually work? If you get any value from this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's listen to the conversation. Well, Emily, I'm so glad to have you on the show. This has been a great conversation we had prior to this, and I'm just hoping to continue that conversation and for you to share your journey and talk a little bit about what you've been doing. But I want to start here and ask you, what initially drew you into tech sales, this career in sales, and how did your early experience shape your approach to this profession?
My very first sales job was actually before I entered my university. So I was about 19 years old. I had a gap year from high school to uni, about 9 months. So I went to insurance company, AIA. I don't know if you guys know the brand. I was studying in Singapore, right? So I went to work for AIA and I had to do cold calling. And it didn't went well. Didn't went well at all. I got hung up. Like pretty much, I called 10 people. 9 will hung up on me straight away. And I didn't have any technique in terms of cold calling or sales at all. And the agent who I was helping to just gave me a list of numbers and the name and say, call these people to see if they're interested to buy insurance. And that's it. So after that, I thought maybe sales wasn't the right class for me. But then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad while I was in my second year in university. And that kind of made me thinking, okay, because at that time I didn't know, how much I can do, right? So I was still thinking, okay, if one day I become a business person, I definitely need a sales skill. So I still want to try it. And by the time when I was graduating in my last year, I had an offer from an engineering company. And then I also had this offer from Salesforce.com, the CRM company. So I chose the CRM because I thought, okay, let me give it a try. If in 1 or 2 years' time this doesn't work out, I will switch back to engineering path. And that was my main motivation. And tech sales was not my choice because I had a senior who already went to Salesforce and he got promoted to AE. So he talked to me and say, I now need to find my replacement, basically. Do you want to consider? So that's how I ended up in tech sales.
That is funny. So you had somebody that mentored you or was someone that was basically an inspirational figure in your life say, hey, I need somebody to take my spot. I'm moving up. Do you want to take that spot? So with that, how was your experiences working for a very large company? How was your experiences as being an SDR or a BDR?
This is a really interesting question because nowadays people think of Salesforce is a huge company, right? But when I was joining Salesforce in Singapore, there were maybe 100 people in Singapore, and globally maybe 2,000. So it was still very early stage, and I think we were Salesforce went public in 1999, and the time I joined was 2007. So they were already stabilized in America, but in Asia Pacific is a totally different story. It was still very early stage. I was in charge of the Greater China market, which is China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. And the main language is Chinese, but we didn't even have a Chinese website when I joined.
Wow. So that must have been very difficult
Yes.
because you literally are trying to, in real time, tell somebody who knows absolutely nothing about your business. I know you do the inbound portion of it, but even later on when you move past inbound and you're reaching out and they're like, what are you talking about? that makes already something that's already an already difficult job or challenging job even that more difficult. Uh, Speaking about difficulties, can you talk about the challenges that you faced being an SDR, BDR in general, and even some pointed like examples or stories that you could share that might resonate with the audience?
Because I was a fresh graduate and I studied engineering, not even business. So I had totally absolute zero knowledge about selling, let alone enterprise software selling, right? So my very first challenge was really to be able to process all the inbound leads,
Mm-hmm.
qualify them based on the criteria we were using at that time, and go home on time. I can tell you, my first week, I basically stay in the office until 9 p.m. every day because I don't know how to control my call duration. I don't know what are the more important information to ask than the other. I don't know how to prioritize what are the tasks. For example, you could have today's fresh lead coming in, right? Do you call them first, or do you call those leads that you didn't, manage to connect the day before or 2 days ago? So my workload just kind of piling up. I was talking about that senior who referred me the job, right? And they all saw me struggling. But then this senior actually asked me to stay back after one evening and said, okay, now you really have to understand, out of all the leads, you have already been talking to them for like 2 weeks, right? Do you get a feeling like how many of them are good leads? How many of them are actually rubbish? So I said, I think like 50% they are not even giving me the right company name, right phone number, or right email. One of those things, right? And then for the other, I think maybe about 10 to 20% are so-called good leads. You can talk to them and kind of qualify on BNT. And then in between, there's another 30%, which is you don't know. Can either go the good side or the bad side. Yeah, so he then taught me that the most important thing in qualification is actually pain point and followed by authority. I think that's definitely one of the most critical skill I think salespeople needs to have to be successful.
Yes, I think the whole idea of being absolutely curious about what the other person is doing, what they need, and then really kind of, especially in what we call discovery, in that discovery phase, where you're just really kind of trying to extract how you can provide value for them, if this is even a right fit, because it's not. Sometimes your solution is not the right solution for everyone, but is this a right fit, and can this particular product that I serve or I share with them serve them in the right way? So that's absolutely something that we make sure that we know and do. But not everybody knows how to do that in other industries as well.
Yeah.
So so it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. Let me ask you this because you talked about being a coach just now. Where was that transition when you went from working in tech sales to actually coaching in tech sales?
So my career path was very, I would say, very common. So I start from SDR inbound and then SDR outbound, and then I become AE. I did 4 companies, and then in the last company, um, they again were entering Asia Pacific, just like Salesforce years ago, and they needed someone that understand software selling and understand the market to be the sales trainer to the entire Asia Pacific team. And that is when I made the switch. So again, it wasn't because I was thinking of changing the past. Actually, if that opportunity didn't come along the way, I was planning to become just a more experienced AE and do a number of years more as an individual quota carrying person. And maybe I will go into sales manager role. So yeah, so that is how it come about. And then when I moved to Netherlands in 2016, I then had a chance to really decide, okay, what do I want to do? Because basically at that point of time, I'm already financially quite have a very strong foundation. I invested like in properties and things like that. So I
Mm.
don't really have to work to earn a living.
Okay.
Uh,
Good.
yeah, and then I heard a voice in me and saying that all these lessons you have accumulated over the years, all these traps you have fall in, right? Maybe share it with the others that are just starting the journey, so that they can avoid some of these mistakes.
Oh, let me
And
pause right there. You said traps. What traps did you feel like you fell into in your career?
I think there are two parts of it. One part is just about all the skill sets. Like, for example, I mentioned about qualification. That's a key skill. The other things are like when you first do outbound, you also didn't know what to do, right? Like cold calling, cold emailing. And then when you become an AE, you have to learn to do territory planning. So all these things, nobody actually really teach you, right? You are kind of learning along the way. Maybe you get recommended a few books like Sandler or sales negotiation tactic, those kind of stuff. But to really because sales is a practical skill, right? It's not a theoretical. It's like driving
Hmm.
a car. You have, even if you know all the rules and all the theories, but if you can't really drive the car, you are still not able to get your driver license.
Yeah.
So sales is the same thing. Like you have to really combine the theoretical knowledge with your experience and actually do it to learn and improve better. So that is what I you know felt a stumble along the way. So I think these two things, uncertainty and the constant stress, is the two things that I saw more people fall into the trap. Because when they come into tech sales, I don't think anyone really emphasize this to them, right?
Yeah, I think it's more emphasized about the money, the flexibility, things of that nature. The tech industry for a very long time, and we talked about this on our show that we have on Monday mornings, Talk That Tech. Actually talked about it last week. There's a timeline, right, where basically probably even from the 70s, the tech industry was idolized as this place for not just only high paying roles, but flexibility and perks and all these different things. And now we're seeing a change in the market that's actually impacting how tech companies are hiring. They're being a bit more selective. It's an employer's market, for lack of a better terminology, and people are starting to get hip to the idea that it's not a wonderland like it used to be. It's actually a place of work that's going to be as demanding as other industries. Can you talk about the shift that you've seen, because you were part of Salesforce early on? What shifts have you seen when it comes to the market that's impacting how tech companies are moving going forward with their employees?
You are really spot on about, I have a unique perspective from Salesforce, because you probably know Salesforce is the revolutionary software company that started this SaaS model, right?
Hmm.
And it's actually because of this SaaS model that the companies who are small SMBs that used to not be able to afford the expensive software like Oracle, they could buy a SaaS software like Salesforce, and that suddenly increased the whole market size. And then
Hmm.
also because it's a recurring revenue, so Salesforce could afford to give a really big package to attract really, top people to become tech sales. And this is where the fairy tale start to develop in the early days. When I just joined Salesforce in 2007, Star Wars, right? The
Yeah.
movie. And our Salesforce CEO, Mark Benioff, was a big Star Wars fan. The analogy was that Oracle is kind of the big guy, the establishment. Salesforce was the rebel. We are coming in to disrupt the market and bring democratization to all the businesses.
Mm.
And and I think in the beginning, 10, 15 years, yes, Salesforce definitely delivered on that promise. And I remember like a lot of people from Oracle, right? The salespeople, they start to come to Salesforce. They
Mm.
would just, flip the camp and then join join the enemy. And then the shift that I experienced personally was that when I joined Salesforce, many of position SDR as the training camp. Like you guys are being trained to join the AE army in 1 year or maximum 2 years. But then because all this because Salesforce become more aware and a better brand, right? And all these experienced salespeople from Oracle and other companies start to apply. Actually, there were overqualified people to become AE and even SDRs. So
Wow.
therefore, people will see in our promotion path is actually got blocked. And then the other thing is when I see the the Wall Street basically really like Wall Street in the beginning doesn't really understand the revenue model from SaaS. So they didn't know that it's like every year you can collect that much money and as long as you can retain your customers, right? But then as Wall Street start to getting used to the idea and the more company learn to replicate the SaaS model, you start to see that the pay from salespeople start to sometimes they will come down a little bit or they stabilize at a certain point. And when I joined Tableau, for example, which is 2013, 7 years later, right? They actually say that we are not going to pay the top package to the AE or to the SDR candidates because we feel that number one, our company has a very very good product and there is enough talent in the market. So we are actually only maybe they are paying like 90% of what Salesforce was offering then, but they could still get the very good candidates to join them. So, and I think nowadays, if you look at the really early stage SaaS startup companies, their salary is actually not that fantastic. Only when the company has become, I would say, at least stable in their, primary market, whether it's North America or Europe, then their package can go a bit better. And then when they come to, for example, Asia Pacific to hiring people, their pay is on par to what Tableau or Salesforce that can offer.